Hello friends and welcome into NFL Daily. I am your host Tom, down with all the latest NFL rumors and news to break down for you on today's show. And we're going to start things off with, where else? The Russell Wilson drama over in Seattle. Now, Russell Wilson's deadline for a new deal is today. Now, that deadline was given to the Seattle Seahawks back in January. So far, no new deal has been reached. Now, Wilson's agent in Seattle are negotiating, and the alleged demand from Wilson's camp is that if a deal isn't reached today, they're just not going to get one done with Seattle. They'll play the franchise tag game, they'll go play free agency down the road, and Wilson will get a lot of money that way. Now, I don't know if I actually believe that, because what happens if, in 2 months, Seattle says, you know what, Russ, let's just give in to your demands. Here's everything you ever wanted, hand it to you on a silver platter. At that point, I kind of feel like Russell would sign that deal, and he wouldn't, say, no, I'm going to wait till do the franchise tagging thing and then hit the open market. Now, for Wilson, once he gets this deal, assuming he does, it's going to be a massive contract. I have every expectation, and so do the Seahawks and everyone else out there, that Wilson will become the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. That means surpassing Aaron Rodgers at $33.5 million. Now, we'll have a little in-depth look at the contract breakdown later on NFL Daily for you in the coming days, but it's probably going to surpass that. Look at the deals that have been given out to other notable quarterbacks, even as Wilson sits right now. Matthew Stafford, Derek Carr, Andrew Luck, all making more money right now than Russell Wilson is on his current deal. Heck, Wilson is making under $22 million per year. Now, that's also the nature of NFL contracts, that the highest paid guy is normally the most recent paid guy. But for Wilson to be behind Nick Foles and Joe Flacco and Alex Smith, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense based on their level of play. Now, I do expect what you'll see happen is that Wilson gets paid a massive amount of money. Now, the Flacco, Foles, Smith deals, those aren't even relatable to Russell Wilson. In reality, it's much closer to the deal for Aaron Rodgers. So once Wilson gets paid in a significant way, it's going to be a massive deal. Ignore that $21.9 million number for Wilson right now. It's going to be a huge uptick, and a big reason why, and just remember this, the salary cap continues to grow. So should Seattle make Russell Wilson the highest paid quarterback in the NFL? Type Y for yes, type N for no. I don't believe Wilson is the best quarterback in the NFL, but I do believe he's one of the best. I think at least top 7. I have him top 5 personally. That means you're going to get paid in a massive way. We'll stick with Seattle here for our next rumor, a possible Frank Clark trade. The rumors kind of keep heating up again. I don't know how much to believe in them. Now, on one hand, you have to pay Russell Wilson so much money. You want to extend your other linebackers like KJ Wright and Bobby Wagner going forward. So from that perspective, if you want to move away Frank Clark, it does free up more money in the long term for you. It does allow you to afford other players and afford that big deal for Russell Wilson. My big concern with trading away Frank Clark, who's going to provide your pass rush? 13 sacks last year for Frank Clark. He was your go-to edge rusher and really the only truly reliable option Seattle had on that defensive line. If you get rid of Frank Clark, you better get something good back, because then you need to go find a new edge rusher. You did draft Rasheem Green last year. He didn't have the biggest impact. You have Quentin Jefferson, Cassius Marsh. That's not going to get the job done on the edge. That's simply not going to be enough. Now, I do love your interior of your defensive line, but you still need pass rushers in today's NFL. So from the Seattle Seahawks perspective, if you let go of Frank Clark, it opens up a massive need on the edge. Now, the rumors, I'm sure, will stick around there. Pro Football Talk mentioned them as well. One team just to kind of keep an eye out for, the Buffalo Bills do make quite a bit of sense for Seattle in a Frank Clark trade if that's the route Seattle actually wants to explore. Today's show is brought to you guys by BetDSI, the internet's #1 sportsbook. Head over to chatsports.com/bet and use that promo code LIVE120 for a 120% deposit bonus. You put down $50, they're going to give you $60 for free. Put down $100, they're going to give you $120. Go use that money to bet on the NFL draft. All kinds of draft prop bets on BetDSI. So don't forget that promo code LIVE120. Speaking of the NFL draft here, is Kyler Murray and the Cardinals losing steam? Daniel Jeremiah, kind of the focal point on this. He said back on April 1st, and mentioned this today, he's about 90% sure that Kyler Murray was going to go #1 to the Arizona Cardinals. Then today he comes out and says, you know what, I'm only 60% sure. Meanwhile, Peter King reports that the Cardinals front office is not unanimous on taking Kyler Murray. So now we continue to have the uncertainty drama around the Arizona Cardinals and what could happen at the number 1 overall pick. Now, at this point, we're just a couple of days away from the NFL draft. The big board's pretty close to being finalized if it's not already finalized for the Arizona Cardinals. And maybe this is just them still trying to find a way to build up trade hype so they can move down out of the number 1 overall pick. But the buzz around Murray and the Cardinals is certainly not going to go anywhere at this point. I have to admit, there's definitely some legitimacy to it. So what should the Cardinals do with that number 1 overall pick? Type M for Kyler Murray, B for Nick Bosa, you can honorable mention, I guess, Quinnen Williams as well, or T for a trade down. If I personally am Arizona, I'm trying to trade down because I still believe in Josh Rosen, and that roster has so many flaws, you're not going to find that level of upgrade unless you can trade down and acquire extra assets, extra instant impact players, or at least guys you can develop into playing a key role. We'll stick with quarterbacks here. Next up, Daniel Jones and the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins are working out Jones this week, which is interesting because my comp, and I know many others' comp, is that Daniel Jones is just like Ryan Tannehill. Now, the Dolphins did find their stopgap quarterback in Ryan Fitzpatrick, who signed this offseason. They had the number 13 overall pick. I think there's a decent chance that Daniel Jones is on the board this year. I think more so than anything, though, this is the Miami Dolphins doing their due diligence. When you do not have a long-term answer at the quarterback position, you should explore every single guy coming out. Now, maybe Daniel Jones will blow him away and they'll take him. However, I think it's a lot more likely that instead, the Dolphins pass on quarterbacks altogether early in this year's NFL draft and continue to build out the rest of their roster. I don't know what quarterback would come into Miami and have success with this roster right now. The reality is Dolphins are in a full-on rebuild. So they might take more of a Browns approach. Let's build out the rest of our roster. Let Ryan Fitzpatrick do what he can. He'll be our stopgap, nice veteran leader for a young team that's going to need it, especially as they unfortunately, in all likelihood, lose a lot of games next year. So I am doubting that the Dolphins will take Daniel Jones. Instead, I think it's far more likely they take a trench player, be on the offensive line or the defensive line, and then focus instead on getting their quarterback in 2020 or even 2021. We'll stick with the draft here. Next up, the Oakland Raiders. There's some mixed signals here on the Oakland Raiders' interest in Josh Allen. First off, he is visiting the Raiders today and tomorrow. That's Monday and Tuesday. Meanwhile, Victor Four of The Athletic says the Raiders don't love Josh Allen. Now, the intriguing part could be this, and we'll mention this player as well. What happens if the first 3 picks on the board in some order are Nick Bosa, Kyler Murray, and then Quinnen Williams? Now, the Raiders desperately need edge rusher help, and Josh Allen would certainly come in, I think, be their best edge rusher. And I mean no disrespect to Arden Key there. That's how good I think Josh Allen is. At 6'5", basically, 262, he can play with his hand on the ground. And in general, it's pretty tough to have 17 sacks in the SEC and be a fluke on that front. And the reality is, if you're the Oakland Raiders, you got to find some defensive line help. Like that is the biggest thing there for the Oakland Raiders. You have to find more edge rusher help. You have to find an impact player to help you out in that role. Now, the Raiders do have some depth right now. They have Arden Key. They signed Josh Morrow. They signed Benson Mayowa. None of those guys, though, are actually premier edge rushers. Now, Arden Key could become that, but I think the Raiders fans can agree here, the biggest need for the Oakland Raiders right now, in a pretty significant margin, is finding that edge guy. So maybe they can find that guy with Josh Allen at number 4 overall if that's the route that they want to end up going. Now, the other option, if Quinnen's off the board, what about linebacker Devin White to the Oakland Raiders? Now, he's flying into Oakland for a visit on Tuesday and Wednesday, and White is the top linebacker in this year's class, and the Raiders like him quite a bit. Now, if Quinnen Williams is on the board, I don't know if they take Devin White over him. But if they aren't actually convinced on Josh Allen, maybe they surprise. Maybe they take Devin White, number 4. Allen slides down to number 5 instead. Now, Devin White, despite the Raiders' additions at linebacker, those aren't all long-term upgrades there for the Oakland Raiders. Those are short-term options. So for Devin White in particular, it makes some sense to have that long-term impact guy. Now, they brought in Vontaze Burfict. They have Brandon Marshall. Those guys are on short-term deals. Tahir Whitehead is there for now. He's also not necessarily a 10-year guy like Devin White would be. So you bring in Devin White. You probably have too many guys at linebacker, but you could definitely find a way to make that work if you're the Oakland Raiders. And if they actually are convinced on Devin White, Of the guys we've mentioned, Josh Allen, Quinn Williams, and Devin White, I think that's the most likely guy to for sure be there for the Raiders in the NFL draft. So who should Oakland take with the number 4 pick? Type JA for Josh Allen and DW for Devin White. Based on my board, the Raiders' needs, and just how I view these players, I'm going with Josh Allen. That's not a slight on Devin White at all, but I've got Allen as a top 3 player in this year's NFL draft. So the potentiality of getting a top-tier player at your biggest need, that just makes too much sense for me. Now, folks, make sure you're subscribed to youtube.com/chatsportstv. It's linked right there at the bottom of your screen. We're going to have full NFL draft coverage, all 7 rounds for you guys, every single pick broken down on our live stream. And by the way, we'll have the picks before everybody else. That's what happened last year. youtube.com/chatsportstv. Hit that big red button. Make sure you're subscribed. Some more draft talk here. Ed Oliver and the New York Jets, they are next up. He is meeting with the Jets the next 2 days. This is interesting to me because I love Ed Oliver, the player and the prospect and the upside. I don't love his fit, though, in the Jets' defensive scheme. Now, I'm a big fan of Leonard Williams, but for Ed Oliver, I don't know how well he fits. He is going to be best as a gap shooter in an attacking defensive style. Now, the Jets could use him more in that role, but in a 3-4 scheme, typically, even though we know how much teams use base packages, it does require you to have a little bit more two-gapping and be more of a run stopper. That's not how I want to use Ed Oliver long term. And for the Jets, your defensive line is fine. You re-signed Henry Anderson. You still have Leonard Williams for now. You drafted Nathan Shepard and Folo last year pretty early in the draft. You've got plenty of defensive linemen. What you don't have is actual pure edge rushers. That's not what Ed Oliver is going to be in the NFL. I want him on the interior. So I don't quite get this fit. Now, I will make note from the Jets' perspective. Their general MO under GM Mike McGagnon is that they're just going to take the best player on the board. They've always known that that's led to multiple defensive linemen, and we know Mike likes those guys. Maybe Ed is the guy, especially if they end up trading down like they so desperately want to do. I think edge makes more sense, but it is at least worth mentioning Ed Oliver and the Jets' connection. Speaking of edge, let's talk about Jadeveon Clowney, who still far apart in a long-term deal with the Houston Texans. Now, of course, Houston placed a franchise tag for Clowney. He's not going to show up to the early offseason program stuff until he has to, and this is all voluntary right now, for most at least. Now, for Clowney, hasn't had 10 sacks in a season, but he's been pretty close the past 2 years, 9 and 9.5. Clowney has maybe not been, compared to Khalil Mack, the same caliber of edge rusher, but he's certainly not been a bust. Now, injuries that did impact him early in his NFL career, 6 and then 4.5 sacks, 2016, 2015, but he's been a very, very, very good player for him. The big issue for Houston, you got to figure Clowney's going to ask for what DeMarcus Lawrence got, even though Lawrence is a better pure player right now. I'm really both against the run and against the pass. If Houston doesn't want to pay that, maybe they wait and try and trade him at some point, maybe even during the NFL draft. That feels like a long shot right now. This might be a play him on the franchise tag, and then they will reevaluate after this season ends. Over to KC now, where Tyreek Hill will report for offseason programming today. He's there for the first day for the Chiefs. Still under investigation for some domestic incidents involving abuse of a child potentially there. A bit of a red flag there for KC and Tyreek Hill, and the NFL is not going to make a decision until after the police finish up their investigation. Now, the Chiefs and Tyreek Hill were working on a deal that could have made Hill the highest paid receiver in the NFL. That's been tabled for now. Of course, when he's on the field, we know how dynamic Tyreek Hill is. One of the most dangerous players in the entire NFL, both on returns and in the receiving game. So, good news is he's there. The bad news is, at least for KC, that cloud will continue to hang over them until that police investigation is finished up. So Hill at KC workouts, but plenty to discuss there for him in terms of his off-the-field issues. Now, today's show is brought to you guys by BetDSI, the internet's #1 sportsbook. Use promo code LIVE120 at chatsports.com/bet. Go bet on the NFL draft. All kinds of prop bets going to be up there. By the way, follow me on Twitter at WhatGoingDowney. We'll make some big money together, just like we did for the NFL Combine. That's chatsports.com/bet. Promo code LIVE120. One last rumor here. That is no Julio at the Falcons offseason program. He's not going to show up. Now, Julio has recently said he doesn't care about being the highest paid wide receiver, but he's only the 12th highest paid right now. He had the issues last year in terms of getting an adjustment made to his deal. It's at least worth monitoring. Now, I'm not going to panic by any means about Julio Jones, but his deal is under contract through 2020, and Atlanta does not want to set a precedent of, you know what, yeah, we'll redo your deal with a couple years left, because that's going to make every other player want to do the exact same thing. Now, to hear Julio is the 12th highest paid, it feels wrong, right? I mean, you get the guys at the top, Odell Beckham, Antonio Brown, heck, even Mike Evans-Hopkins. That at least makes some sense. And Adam Thielen's now there at number 7 because he just got his brand new deal as well. Sammy Watkins is pretty high. That's a little weird. Jarvis Landry. Julio's all the way down at number 12, $14.2 million. So once he gets that big, fat new deal, it's probably going to approach that Antonio Brown, Odell Beckham range. Now, again, I'm not going to panic yet by any means on Julio Jones not showing up for offseason programs, because guess what? He's a freak athlete. He's been around forever. If there's players who don't need the offseason program, it's guys like Julio. Still fantastic athletes that have been around for a while and can pretty much walk out there, and having not played at all in the preseason, and be the same guy we all know and love. Now, question for you guys, and I think I know most of your answers, but who's the better wide receiver? Both Julio Jones and Tyreek Hill kind of due for new contracts. So who's better? Who should be the highest paid of those two? Let me know in the comment section by typing in J for Julio and H for Tyreek Hill. Me personally, no disrespect to Tyreek Hill, but I'm going to go with Julio Jones instead. So that's my pick, but let me know what you guys think in the comment section.